I will have to edit this.
Right. Good to know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Geeks Critiques.
He's talking really weird, isn't he?
He's talking very.
Because I hate my own voice, so I'm going to talk like this.
Over there, that's David Tyler McKay. He's the man who runs Geek Critiques. Me, I'm Matt Kessen. If he were the right, proper kind of host, he'd be doing all of these introductions. But here we are. This is the world that we live in. Hi, I'm today's guest, Matt Kessen.
And what are we doing today,
Oh
Matt
my God.
Kessen?
Fucking stop it. Am I working? I'm working blue now. I don't know. I hadn't decided to, but now I am. Today we will be discussing War of the Planet of the Apes and its place in the larger Planet of the Apes oeuvre, and what the Planet of the Apes movies are about and why they're awesome.
Super quickly, this is going to be the spoiler-free 2 minutes, whatever.
Are we doing this spoiler-free? Can we talk about
2 or 3 minutes?
Oh, I see, and then we go on. Okay.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you think about the movie?
Super good. Very, very good. A lot of people aren't into the recent trilogy, as it turns out to be, of Planet of the Apes movies. I very much am into them. I loved Rise. Completely and unreservedly. Dawn was also pretty good. I have one big beef with Dawn, and perhaps we'll get into that later, and perhaps we will not. And
Alright, Dawn hates you. Alright, go ahead.
What's that? We have a friend called Dawn. That's not what I mean. But War was good. War was did not thrill me as much as Rise did, but I really loved Rise. But was a good deal better than Dawn as far as I'm concerned. No, it was good. I've seen it twice now, and I've got a friend who wants to see it, and I'll go see it a third time. It was a good movie.
I would say it was a damn good movie. This isn't a spoiler to say. The CGI effects of faces.
It was nuts.
It's a whole new level.
Something's going on, yeah.
And I know it's like people say it's a whole new level like every 2 months, but it really is a whole new level. I mean, their faces are, and I know it's motion capture and it's all that, but there's no uncanny valley.
Yeah, no, and the funny thing about this is that he started talking to me about this after we got out of it earlier today, and this is literally something I had specifically thought previously after I saw the movie. I'm like, some of those shots were of actual fucking sentient apes, and you cannot tell me otherwise. And it's weird. I mean, and it's partially because they're animals, and we're not as cued to animal faces as we are to human faces. So we're not out of that uncanny valley for people yet. But for the first time in ages, I felt like that might be a possibility because it was so good, so good.
And it's interesting because people have been saying that this was going to happen for years and years and years and years. You know, every other movie. I think, what was the one we were talking about that was the big one? Final Fantasy?
Final Fantasy, yeah.
That was the one everyone talked about. This is the real thing. No more actors are going to be hired for movies. And it's like, no, they're dead.
Yeah.
Dead eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is some relatively specific War for the Planet of the Apes talk. It is my understanding that the first thing that happens is not just talking about specific parts about War of the Planet of the Apes, but rather the spoiler-free... What's the spoiler-free part?
This is it?
Oh, hi. It is, it's a good movie.
We basically just say for a little bit, the spoiler-free zone is just if we like it or not.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we can talk about CGI by being spoiler-free, yes. It is also, to my surprise, because I've been following this because I like them very much, I was surprised to learn that it was, like, 3 months ago, that it was the third in a trilogy. They'd never been describing it in trilogy terms until just very recently, so apparently they decided to make it, and then they were done, and that's fine. And it is a good, but it works. One thing we were talking about earlier was, Dave was saying, say a producer comes up to you and says, give me a treatment for a fourth, and I don't have an answer yet. I don't know. This movie ends a story.
My scenario was basically... Now we'll just get into spoilers.
Okay, hi.
But my scenario basically was, if the producer was saying, hey, you have to make another Apes movie. You just have to figure something out. Even though this really encapsulates, like, the story is done.
Yeah.
The story's over. What would you do?
And I don't have an answer right now because every conflict in these three movies so far is resolved, and you just start to have to make up more shit, and 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 somebody might do that, and I'll go see it because I will see anything that says Planet of the Apes on it. But
well, and my answer, which you strongly disagreed with, but
yes,
to me, the only thing that could come after would be, like, say, the original movie or a new twist on the original movie, which would be human in space comes back to Earth many years in the future, and it would be the future after this,
right?
And so all it wouldn't be a sequel in the sense that these characters would be in it.
It would be right. It would be. I mean, you could do a straight remake of the original Planet of the Apes, and they might. But the original Planet of the Apes is, I mean, there's a couple things that you could argue with it about if you liked. I mean, Charlton Heston is overblown, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be sort of this over the top Superman, and people don't like it, but I think it's the right decision. I mean, if you took the CGI that we were just talking about and applied it to the Apes characters, then it would look better than the makeup. But the makeup was extraordinary in Planet of the Apes. The makeup was unbelievable in the 1960s Planet of the Apes, and so there's just no I mean, other than endless remake land, there's nothing wrong with the original Planet of the Apes other than that people aren't making money off of it anymore. So maybe they'll just fucking remake it, but there's no point in it. There's no reason.
But in a way, these three that we just saw are a bit of a remake of some of the older ones.
Right, but they were also okay.
And you could have made the argument of, like, well, why remake those? They've been done, and it wasn't that great.
The trilogy, okay, so the trilogy of these films, Rise and Dawn and War, are basically a remake of the last two of the 5 original Planet of the Apes films, which are Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And the thing about about Conquest and Battle...
which are not, like, the best, by any means.
Conquest is real good. Battle is garbage. So you can remake Battle because it's garbage anyway. And Conquest is real good, but it's a little... Conquest is kind of about the Watts riots.
Oh, yeah.
And hooray for that. And it's an amazing movie about the Watts riots, and that's great. And but you can... I love Conquest. I think it's a really well-made film. But...
well, for people who don't know, could you really quickly summarize Conquest and Battle?
Okay, sure. Conquest is basically the ape uprising. We're in the near future, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's the ape uprising. An ape called Caesar. The apes are kind of used as sort of slaves by humans, and an ape called Caesar rises up and casts off their chains and overthrows the human system of enslaving them.
There's a similar aspect where there's a disease, and in Conquest there is a disease that killed off all pets, and so people started getting apes as pets, but then found out that, well, hey, they could do more stuff, I might as well have them clean up the house and things like that.
So Conquest is the ape uprising, but specifically the Watts riots, through the lens of the Watts riots, and then Battle is just kind of a post. So there's the ape uprising, and then the world is nuked, because the world being nuked is super important to the original Planet of the Apes. And then Battle is some years after the world is nuked, and Caesar is still the main character, and leading his group of apes against human survivalists.
And similar to Don, and tell me if I'm mistaken, but there is an evil gorilla general. It's Waldo, right?
Aldo, not Waldo.
Aldo.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But there's a similar evil gorilla.
Yeah, there's a well, it's not a gorilla. It's not a gorilla in Dawn. It's a bonobo or a bon. I don't know how that's pronounced. I've never seen it written.
Bonobo.
Bonobo. There's Koba in Dawn, who is a bonobo rather than a gorilla. But yeah, there's a foil or indeed villain for Caesar. And yes, that's another. Yeah, there are
similarities.
There are a number of similarities. But the thing about it is that Battle is garbage, and Conquest is really good, but you're watching it and you're saying to yourself, look, it's the 1970s, and that's fine. There's a number of the greatest movies ever made are dripping with their own specific time, are artifacts of their time, and that is not a flaw, but it is, to my mind, a reason that you can go ahead and remake it. Go ahead.
What else is interesting to me? I believe that the originals and these kind of remakes, don't they also have a thoughtful orangutan character who
Well, yeah,
is an advisor?
yeah,
Don't
but
they both?
that's established. The fact that the orangutans are brainiacs is established all the way back to Dr. Zaius, though. I mean, they all.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
But like a peaceful advisor to Caesar character.
Yes, they both.
Isn't that interesting?
Well, it's more of a through line in the modern one, but because the peaceful advisor to Caesar is what's his name in battle. He does not have an orangutan advisor in Conquest.
Oh, okay.
So that shows up in battle, and it's true. It is a commonality. You were talking about how both of them have the bald, bearded guy who is the enemy, General Kolb in Conquest and Battle, and the Colonel whose name I don't remember in War, played by Woody Harrelson, who was so charming in Cheers, don't you think? Oh man, and
he was, and his character. So I mean, for people who've seen Conquest and Battle, there's this character who it's weird because he's evil, maniacal, but he's kind of thoughtful, and to some extent he's impressed with the intelligence of the apes, and he will stop and remark upon it every now and then about like, isn't it interesting? You're an ape and you can do this stuff, huh?
Right.
I'll still have to murder you, but
right. And Colonel Woody does the same thing, and that's one of the interesting things about War actually is that almost there wasn't a lot of callbacks to the five in Dawn. There were a number of them in Rise. I mean, these are the stories of Caesar. You take those two movies, and then these three movies, and that's the story of Caesar. So that doesn't even count as a callback exactly. But there's a million little jokes. There's the orangutan advisor is called Maurice. Which is a riff on Maurice Evans, who played Dr. Zaius. Caesar's love interest is Cornelia. In War, they have a son called Cornelius. War also had, and there's about, we won't go into Rise too much, but War had Cornelius, had the scarecrows, had the big X-shaped scarecrows, which are the first signs of civilization that they see in the original Planet of the Apes, and there's a callback to that, which was a nice one, because I don't really think that's not richly symbolic of Planet of the Apes to everyone in the world, but people who are into it were like, oh shit, it's the scarecrows.
I bet a lot of modern audiences actually saw them and thought of Game of Thrones, because in Game of Thrones,
they have big X scarecrows in Game of Thrones.
One of the main bad guys, he puts people upside down and skins them and puts them on these big X's.
He probably has a good reason. I don't watch Game of Thrones, guys. I've turned to look at the camera, the camera where the microphone is, to say I don't watch Game of Thrones.
But I bet people saw that and thought it was a Game of Thrones reference, but it is not. It is a reference to Planet of the Apes, the very first movie. They were scarecrows to scare humans away from the crops.
Right, and in this they're crosses. In this they're crucifixes. They chain the apes to them and display them to demonstrate the wrongness of their actions, and and that was great. I was thrilled to see that. And then another thing that it does, which I completely didn't expect, is it explains the muteness of the humans as we get it in Planet of the Apes, which I did not see coming and was fucking thrilled to see, and it explains that, and also the first mute human that you encounter is called Nova, which is another lovely little callback. And I did not expect all those callbacks, and I did not expect. Well, I expected some of the callbacks. Like I said, Rise had Maurice and a bunch of stuff, but the fact of the matter is that War of the Planet of the Apes is a movie that takes Rise and Dawn and puts them on the road to friggin' Charlton Heston and Roddy McDowall. One
of the really interesting things to me also is that so just so people know, in the original, although there was a disease that wiped out pets,
it's nuclear war. Yeah, humans are in you maniacs, you blew it up, damn you all to hell.
They did, but then that turns out in Conquest, that turns out to have been the ape uprising is what kind of melted all the cities. Whereas Charlton Heston assumed that we had just annihilated.
Well, no, the ape uprising leads to nuclear war. In battle, it is implicitly post-nuclear. And the ape uprising may have, triggered the tension that led to it, but it's definitely post-nuclear because it's the 60s and 70s, and we are in the depths of the Cold War. Yeah. And
but what I'm trying to get to though is that the disease factor is kind of interesting. In the previous movies, originals, I don't think they at any point pointed out specifically what it was that made humans mute.
No, they didn't do that. It was just a kind of general degradation, and the uplifting of the apes was just kind of a general evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, and I'm all for... No, I really think that spoiler alert, although we're well past that, the muting of the humans is due to a mutation of the virus. And frankly, I'm super into an anti-nuclear movie. And the anti-nuclear thing in Planet of the Apes is glorious and irreplaceable and wildly important to that film, which is one of my favorite films in the world. But that said, having humans die out, B, apes become sentient, 3, or rather C, from the way I've been doing this, C, humans become mute, all explained by a single virus that affects things differently. It's science fiction science, and nothing's ever going to work. No, I'm for it. I think it's relatively elegant to take this. Fewer humans, they're mute. Apes are sentient. I think it's a fairly elegant single explanation for these 3 otherwise unrelated.
I have a question for you for a reference that I saw but wasn't sure if they connected it. So, did you see in a bunch of the graffiti and kind of the military cults talking about Alpha and Omega a lot?
Yeah, there's the Omega bomb.
Yeah, and that's the code word Alpha Omega.
But fuck Beneath Planet of the Apes.
But it's interesting though because although that is from the original Planet of the Apes, I don't know if they established exactly they were, why they were saying Alpha and Omega.
I don't really think it's there's the Omega bomb, but I think that's a bit, I don't think Alpha and Omega is a Planet of the Apes reference. I think it's, they somebody says with words at one point one of the soldiers says that they are the beginning and the end, and that's what Alpha, it's the biblical reference. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and that's perfect for this movie because I mean the soldier doesn't know this, but this movie is about the end of humanity as a civilized thing, and the beginning of the apes taking over. So having a beginning and the end reference is perfect because this movie is a beginning and an end.
Well, it's interesting though. So I'm near 100% sure in Beneath Planet of the Apes when Chuck Heston is talking to Taylor. No, who is the new Chuck Heston?
I don't know.
Well, anyway,
yeah.
When he sees the bomb, he's like, "You see, they're worshiping the bomb," and they're like, "Yeah, do you see the symbol?" And they said, "Oh, Alpha and Omega," and like, "Oh, that's the world killer bomb." And it's interesting.
Is it Alpha and Omega? I thought it was just Omega. I could be wrong.
The symbol's Omega, but they say Alpha and Omega. Yeah.
I don't watch Beneath the Planet of the Apes too much.
It's my favorite.
It is the worst. And
fair. That's fair.
Is that the one where they all look like their penises?
Yeah,
yes.
And I got no fight with that, but...
that's the best part of all the Planet of the Apes movies.
My favorite part.
Well, I'm leaving.
But to stay on topic...
I'll believe... Okay, I'm willing to believe you that it was a reference, but yeah, well, sure. I mean, they're the...
I wish they would have worked in the worship of weaponry a little bit more of the...
Yeah, I wish that all...
But maybe that would have been a reach. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Referencing Beneath the Planet of the Apes is just something I'm not...
One thing that I was really surprised about in this movie is how many different subgenres of movies they kind of worked out. There was a graffiti that said Ape-pocalypse Now.
Ape-pocalypse Now, yeah, sure.
And it was very Apocalypse Now. You've seen Apocalypse Now?
I've seen Apocalypse Now.
A lot of people haven't.
I have not.
I haven't seen Forrest Gump, but I've seen Apocalypse Now.
But it was very much Colonel Kurtz.
And I thought the helicopters showing up was...
You're right.
If the helicopters had had Flight of the Valkyries going, I don't think it would have been in. I mean, it would have been a too on the nose reference. Don't do that, but it was helicopters raining death from the sky in this unbelievably impressive way. So
yeah, and it's interesting that you're talking about how these movies are anti-war, and Apocalypse Now being, of course, a movie that was very anti-war. It showed that war is just insane and doesn't make any sense, and it'll drive everyone crazy.
Of course, yes, Apocalypse Now was a wildly anti-war movie.
And this movie also worked in, I swear, like a Prison Break subgenre as well.
Sure, yeah, that's true, yes.
Because I mean, they're not just like prisoners and it's like, oh, we gotta get out of here. Like there's a whole
tunnels, man.
Yeah,
there's tunnels and shit. Like yeah,
all the
like
regular tropes
the Great Escape,
of
man.
like exactly, yeah. It was like all the regular tropes of a prison escape movie.
Yep, that's true. That is a true fact.
Man.
So let's see.
Where would you rank this movie as far as of the three of this trilogy?
It's the middle one because I love Rise, and I have one big beef with Dawn that wrecks it for me. I think it's a good film, but there's just one thing that I just can't get over, which is the villain, the foil in Dawn is Koba, the bonobo who kind of winds up instigating the war out of his loathing for humans. But what they do is that it's not just out of his loathing for humans; he's also just kind of a psychopathic megalomaniac, and I think that's boring. The thing about Koba is that Koba is established as having been experimented on by humans all of his life, and he's covered in scars and stuff. And there's this one bit where Caesar says that let the humans do their human work, and Koba starts pointing to his scars and going, human work, human work, human work, and it is great. And then he just becomes this selfish psycho megalomaniac, and he's so much better, so much more interesting as just a political radical, as a dude who hates humans and has fucking reason to, and that would be amazing. If I'd gotten that Koba, if I'd gotten somebody who hates humans and is right, at least from his own point of view, then I would have been thrilled. But instead we didn't. And this actually speaks to what one of the things that I love best. The thing about Planet of the Apes movies, and one of the things that I liked about this and Rise, about War and Rise, that is also a failure of Dawn for me, is that there's okay, I don't want to say misanthropy, but both Rise and War were not about figuring out how the apes and humans are going to get along. No, they're both about how the apes are going to stop the humans from ruining them, from destroying them. The apes are anti-human and entirely justified in being so. Whereas Dawn is more of a reconciliation sort of thing. And for me, one of my favorite, and this is me being a bad person, but one of my favorite things about the original Planet of the Apes and about the whole thing is that the apes are justified outsiders. Is that if you are not a human being, I mean, think about this for a minute. Listeners, if you were not a human being, what must human beings look like? If you're not a human being, or a dog, or a rat, or a cat, or anything else that directly benefits from us, humans are a nightmare. Humans are the worst thing that's ever fucking happened to the planet. And so you give something that isn't human sentience, and the chickens come home to roost. We have been terrible, and that's very much what Planet of the Apes is about. What Charlton Heston saying "damn you all to hell." I mean, he's reacting. In his mind, he's reacting to the idea that humans bomb themselves out. But what's happening in that, and I don't think he's thinking this, the character, but what's happened is that Dr. Zaius was fucking right. I mean, Dr. Zaius is a dick, and then Dr. Zaius has a lot of character flaws, but the fact that Dr. Zaius sees a talking human and wants to destroy it is 100% justified with what Dr. Zaius knows about the history of the world. He knows that humans are a blight, and is correct. And the ending is the demonstration that he'd been correct. One of my favorite things in Planet of the Apes, and I'm gonna let David talk just I don't know, any minute now. One of my favorite things in Planet of the Apes, and one of my favorite things in any movie ever, is right towards the end. Charlton Heston's got his horse, and he's got his woman, and he's got his gun, and he's got Dr. Zaius tied to a rock, and he's about to take off on his own. And and he says to Dr. Zaius, "Don't try to follow me. I'm pretty handy with this," referring to the gun, of course. And Dr. Zaius says, "Of that I'm sure," and it is wonderful because Chuck Heston is doing this badass action movie line, and Zaius' response to that is, yes, destruction is precisely what you're here for.
Yeah, Chuck Heston is basically just like super testosterone, like, hey, don't mess with me because I will annihilate everything. It's
exactly.
like, we know that you will annihilate everything.
That is what you are fucking for. And
it's interesting because
that is terrible.
His character starts off in the movie just talking about how he hates humanity, and
right,
that's why he went away. He's like, I hate them; they're terrible. And
then
turns
he
out,
ironically becomes the greatest defender beforehand. He's finding all the human artifacts and saying they were here before you and they were better than you. And it's like, because they had fucking false teeth. Calm down, John Heston.
But then he finds out that, you know what, I hate humanity, and everything everyone did was right, and then he just wanders in the desert after that.
Gone, he's just shot. So what I like best about Planet of the Apes, and there's a lot of things I like about Planet of the Apes, but what I like best is the justified non-human outsider. And Rise gave us that, and War gave us not as much of that, but some of that, and Dawn was less good. So, Mr. McKay and I have both kind of set our pieces. I mean, I am a person, as you have probably detected, who could talk about Planet of the Apes for weeks.
I have one more thing to say.
Yeah, what's your thing?
This is the thing. For the question that we had earlier about what would you do if the studio said you have to make a sequel, I have an answer to this.
What's the answer to this?
And it's the answer that you don't like, but I think we didn't get to it. Which is, you would do basically a Planet of the Apes movie that is the Planet of the Apes, but do it more like the book, where it's modern day.
Yeah, see, I just don't feel that what we've seen is setting up a road that leads to a mimicking of modern day American society. I mean, they've already got the kind of distinctive architectural style, and they talk in sign rather than language most of the time. And but
it's switching. The language is switching. So if it was like 1,000 years or whatever,
I feel like if we were first of all, I feel like if we were pointed towards the apes recreating modern America, that gun would have to be on the mantelpiece already, and it isn't. And then second of all, I personally just, the idea that society can only develop in one way.
No, well, this is what I would postulate. I would postulate, and don't jump the gun on this comparison, but the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie.
Fuck you. Anyway, go on.
If you took just the level of detail he did, but made it modern, so it's like its own different cultural evolution, that it's very ape, but it's also modern,
but
and
they
so
have television. Yeah.
The astronaut shows up, and it's just that they have equivalent technology. It's not that it's like America, but it's an ape.
Okay, all right, that does soothe me considerably.
That's what I was picturing for, like, what could they do after this?
Sure, and I have no fight with that.
That human shows up, and they're a celebrity, and they kind of, it's very similar to Escape from Planet of the Apes.
Sure. Yeah, that's potentially interesting. I feel like the time traveling human thing pushes the envelope for this series too much, because this series is fairly grounded.
But it's how the whole thing started off.
I know.
What if they changed it? Well, and this has been overdone too. I was gonna say, rather than an astronaut who goes through time, it's someone who's been in a sleep chamber, but it's kind of the same effect.
It is the same effect. It's. I mean, there's some. I don't. Now that you're not making it, because of course in the
book.
In the book, it is a basically straight up recreation of modernity of the time. And if you're not saying that, then and it is instead just a high tech ape society. Exactly. Okay, yeah, I got no fight with that. But,
I mean, the only other similarities are that they were using English, so they use English.
Yeah, well,
but they will have made their own society with their own new gods and laws and whatever else.
Right. One of my favorite things in Escape, actually, and this is just a segue, but just the way that that, science fiction always works is that, there's the bit where Cornelius and Zira are on trial, in just a regular courtroom, and somebody brings up, hey, you're speaking perfectly normal English, and they're like, this is the language that we've spoken for 1,000 years, and I'm just, thanks for somebody in the room knowing about languages and that being a thing. But anyway, because science fiction never does that, and it's appalling. But
the other weird thing is how these movies are West Coast and the original were all East Coast, right?
Yep, it's true, yeah.
So maybe the same thing is going on just on different coasts. No.
But eventually, I don't know. Yeah, then it just becomes a question of narrative aesthetic, I mean, technically, with the original Planet of the Apes, you have all the stuff happening on the West Coast, and you can say that there's a baboon society in Oregon that hang glides constantly, and there's no reason there can't be, except that that's stupid.
Well, speaking of stupid,
yes,
I really did think at the end that army was going to turn out to be apes. The whole army from the north, because their faces are covered up.
I know, but
usually
that
anything where there's that much detail about covering up, it's like when the other ape stole the horse.
Yeah, bad ape, yeah.
And as we're watching, I'm like, why is it I can't see their limbs or their face? That is a fucking ape.
Bad ape is.
And then it's like, oh yeah, everything was conveniently, we couldn't see it because it turns out to be an ape, and we're all surprised. I'm sure the whole army was going to do that same thing.
I'm really impressed with First of all, I'm really impressed with Bad Ape because the cowardly clown is super hard to pull off in a post Jar Jar Binks world, and they did.
I will say it's one good thing they did in the Tim Burton movie was Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti was delightful. Yes,
he was fucking great.
But Bad Ape was also the first fucking comedy of any kind in this trilogy, and it was good. It was nice, but yeah, I see what you're saying. But if the invading army had pulled off their masks and been all of apes, that would have completely wrecked the central narrative, which is Caesar as Ape Moses, Caesar as the savior of ape society, because if he's leading the apes through all their tribulations, and then some apes show up with helicopters, it's like, oh, thanks, Caesar, I mean, what have you done? It would have just. It's a fun idea, but it would have, in my opinion, it would have just undercut the fact that this is the story of the glory of Caesar the chimpanzee.
This is true. It needed to be an encapsulation, but to my mind, to me, it would have answered the question of, okay, where are all the other apes? Maybe there are other apes doing all kinds of things.
There's already a shit ton of apes in North America. You know what I'm saying? I mean, already Caesar's own organization is fucking more apes than I expect actually exists on the West Coast. All
right, I think this would be a good time to take some questions from the audience.
Well, first, okay, I didn't see the movie. I'm looking at pictures. These apes and monkeys look really accurate.
They're all apes.
Not okay.
Yeah, they're not monkeys.
Was it is a bonobo an ape?
A bonobo is an ape.
Yeah, monkeys are the little guys with tails.
A capuchin?
Capuchin would be a monkey, yes.
I was close. So these look really more like apey and less like humans in costumes.
Yeah, that's one of the glorious things about this whole trilogy.
These are trained apes. These are trained apes.
These are not trained apes.
Stop it.
But, for the first time...
also, it's great that he's getting work these days.
Yes. Yeah, he was Bad Ape. It was very good. They're amazing looking. They're, not only in terms of the CGI...
like animals.
Yeah, exactly. And it's glorious. And the people that they had do the motion capture for them, they fucking trained those people to move like goddamn apes,
Well, Andy Serkis is like so good at moving anyway.
Andy Serkis is a genius, but all the other people, I mean, there's like this thing that you see sometimes where they move on all fours, sometimes. They stand up a lot because to humanize them, but when they run on all fours, there's this thing where, like, the rear legs are kind of to the side of the front legs, which is, rather than coming in between them, which is, in fact, how apes run, and yet it's counterintuitive, if you see what I'm saying. They did their fucking homework, and it's terrific.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, that seems like something that they did really well.
Steve Zahn, actually, Steve Zahn, not a dude famous for his movement, but the way his ape character moved around was just so good looking, so animal looking.
I think he's good looking. He's like weird, sexy, ugly.
Okay.
As a human, sorry. This is
That's
what
fine.
I do on podcasts.
Well,
I ruined them.
this is not about how good looking he is. This is a point about whether he is an Andy Serkis level movement performer, and I have no previous evidence that he is, but he just nails. He moves so much like a chimpanzee.
One of the questions that you asked earlier was,
I'm gonna ask him.
oh, you got him. Okay.
I wrote them all down.
Just let her ask her questions.
Who's the target
David.
audience of this movie?
I don't know, man, because it cleaned up last week. Its opening weekend, it was #1, and so it did real well.
I was shocked that the first of these did so well, because I was like, well, sure, I'll like it. I should go see it real quick before it bombs.
Likewise,
but then people liked it.
We got the 3 of them, and I don't know who the target audience is. There was,
teen girls.
One thing that occurred to me is that these films, when I do both for Rise and this one, I have had the experience of seeing them in the theater and having some rando Calrissian somewhere in the theater like react verbally in a way that, or at least audibly in a way that I don't normally see. In Rise, it was the thing where Caesar goes no. There was like a little family. Like a couple rows behind me, and the dad goes, "Holy crap!" And it was amazing. And then
people were affected.
It's interesting. And then in this one, there was like a couple behind us and a little to the right who were kind of. They weren't terrible, but they were kind of whispering to each other and not paying attention, as far as I could tell, through much of the film. And then, when spoiler alert, Caesar takes an arrow or a crossbow bolt. Yeah, one of them just gasped the most honest, sad gasp you've ever heard in your life.
I think watching animals get hurt is a different thing.
Exactly.
For people.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that cues into the target market is that I mean, I have my sympathy for the apes because I'm a twisted misanthrope, but yeah, I think people who aren't twisted misanthropes can go to this movie and see terrible things happening to animals who are taken as being more innocent by virtue of being animals, and it works.
Okay. Next question: are any of the apes hot?
It's an excellent question.
It's very cold. I'm very surprised that they picked such a cold climate. Because it's like in the other movies, the original, like it's in a desert and it's really warm.
Caesar has. I'm first of all, I'm basically heterosexual. It's not a big deal. I'm not proud of it, but
it's quite the accomplishment.
No, it really genuinely is not, and So I feel like I should be focusing on the female apes.
Hotness-wise.
Well, one
Judy
of them,
Greer voiced one of them.
Yes, that's exactly it. One of them's
great.
Yeah, she's and hotter than shit.
She's great, and she's hot in real life.
Yeah, right. So the fact that one of them is portrayed by Judy Greer, I'm going to give that. I'm going to give that point.
Solid. Yeah. Okay. What could
Did
they
you want to
have
answer
done?
as well? You can answer.
He said it was cold. His answer was
some
He
bullshit.
wasted his
It was
answer.
cold. It was surprisingly cold in the whole movie. It was snowy.
He wrecked his answer.
I'm surprised because they're not cold weather species. They're warm weather. I think they would have frozen to death.
There's some of them that live in the mountains in Japan, and they go in very
Those
warm...
are monkeys again.
Those are monkeys. I'm bad at this.
That's
okay, next question. What could they have done better? Because the apes, pardon.
Thank you.
I would say aesthetically, from the one small picture I saw, look solid. So what did they do badly?
There's the only and you gave me some time to think about this, and and it is not it is not a grand, flawless movie. I'm not. I liked it quite a great deal. I am not falling on the ground with how utterly perfect it is. But at the same time, I really haven't got much. There's nothing where I was like, oh, wrong. It was well paced and well written and well. Everything was good. The one thing I would say is that there's a monologue given by Woody Harrelson from Cheers.
I know who Woody Harrelson is. He's in the Hunger Games.
I know I'm joking. He's had a very robust career, and I'm reducing it to his first most.
White men can't joke.
And so anyway, Woody Harrelson from Cheers has a monologue, and it's a big old monologue, and it's got a big. It's too long, and it's got a show don't tell problem. So that was, I think, a flaw. But Dave.
Yeah, well, to me, I know that you liked the disease and how it did multiple things, but to me,
I did like it. Yeah. Oh, you don't like it?
there were a few things in the movie that were a bit Deus Ex, where like the avalanche, it's like it's very convenient.
I see what you're saying. You are wrong.
Okay, fair.
But yeah, no, that's fair. I see what you.
Did they establish anyone was setting up that avalanche, or did it really just?
It happened after the army made a whole shit ton of noise. The army makes a whole shit ton of noise, and the avalanche happens. And I also kind of like the avalanche because inevitably with Planet of the Apes, and it's not played up a lot, but there is an implicit man versus nature thing happening, I mean, these are animals that we are at war with. And so having a man versus nature conflict resolved with an avalanche is actually thematically sensible as far as
to me I thought it was supposed to be more of a solid Moses metaphor instead of the water.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, that makes good sense.
I mean, it's water technically.
It is indeed.
Coming and crushing the armies.
Right, yeah, I like it, yeah. But you don't, yeah.
I just wish if he would have done something,
like
or if some of the guys would have been up there doing something with a rock or something, if there would have been something more explicit connecting it.
I don't disagree with that.
And to me, that's the thing with the disease kind of causing kind of whatever is needed. It's like, well, we need the disease to cause monkeys to be smarter. It's like, okay, I could see a disease doing that. It's like, well, disease is also going to make...
Thank you.
Sorry. It's also going to make humans dumber. It's like, oh, well, okay, I guess it could be some rare brain disease, and it's like also mute. It's like, okay, now you're just picking whatever.
Well, it doesn't make humans dumber. It kills them.
Oh, that's right. It did kill them.
It doesn't make them dumber. And that's actually one of the interesting things that we didn't hit upon is that the disease mutates to make people mute, and the Colonel decides that this is stripping them of all of their humanity, whereas all of the mute humans that you meet are perfectly rational as far as you can tell.
The girl was more human than most of the other humans.
Right, and they just can't talk, and that's it. And you got speech center in your brain, and it got fucked up, and that's life sometimes. But in the Planet of the Apes, but yeah, all it strips you, and I thought that was actually this is a segue again, but I thought that was a super interesting thing, was that the Colonel assumes that this is a stripping of all humanity, whereas everybody who's mute is just looks as confused about it as you are. I mean, they're fine. They just can't talk, and the Colonel goes nuts about it, which is interesting. Talking is always so important in these films. I mean, whether or not you can talk is in all of these films a big deal.
I did really like the touch that the girl had gotten a little blood on her doll, and that he had the doll, so he got that disease. I like that little touches. The little touches that connect. It's like, oh, I see why that happened.
No,
That's
it was
what
logical,
I want them to do with other things.
Absolutely. Yep. Everything was logical. Yeah.
Heather, what else you got?
Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
The first time I ever encountered anything that was related to Planet of the Apes was a Simpsons episode.
Oh, God.
I know. And also, it's the first time that I heard that song Amadeus. And
This is how,
David and I hear this song in the car now for some fucking reason all the time.
That's
all the
super
time
weird.
we hear the song.
It's because you listen to that one radio station that plays that in Bon Jovi.
And the song from The Breakfast Club. But that was my first interaction at all with any Planet of the Apes.
That is weird. And
was the one single episode of The Simpsons where they had the Dr. Seuss song set to Amadeus.
Oh, God. I mean, and the whole point of that episode was that it was a bad musical. It's just one of those things where sometimes comedy hits the nail on the head so well that it's like, no, I'm not enjoying this because it is perfectly replicating things that I don't enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
I do like I Hate Every Ape I See from Chimpanzee to Chimpanzee. I think that's amazing, but
well, you finally made a monkey.
Yeah, see, that's where I started listening. But anyway.
Sing Dr. Seuss to Amadeus.
I'm not doing... No. This is not a thing that's happening. Do you have any further questions?
I have a clean
You have a
whiteboard.
clean board. All right. Well, you want to back us on out of here then?
Do it in a normal voice.
Yeah, please.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Listen, guys. Thanks very much for listening to somebody else's podcast that I'm just a guest on, but I'm backing it out again because McKay just can't be trusted with his own voice.
We have other good podcasts where he has a normal voice.
Yeah, I'm Reverend Matt of Reverend Matt's Monster Science, so go look that up. I have my own podcast because I'm a white man in his 40s, and that's what we do.
I'm Heather, and I live in this apartment.
Very good.
And Heather joined us, and Teddy was here too. Okay, goodbye, everybody.